Time flies when
Sitting
you're
in
shmutzing.
shmuz. Okay.
We're all kadima, no?
So we said we had Ahava Rabba and Ahavat Olam. So last time when we finished with the notion that the animal soul needs change, and so it has the lower type of love, called love from
Does
the world.
Does it want change, or is it prepared to accept it? Is it actively seeking
development? Everything has to do with the animal soul, with everything that's it's what it's built on. It's built on the light of God that extends, that changes. But the divine soul is built on the light that's fixed, that doesn't change. So therefore, on the one hand, when the animal soul comes to love, it's a greater type of love in a certain sense, because you feel the novelty, you feel that you've done something. So people pursue that much more than they pursue the love of the divine soul. But when the divine soul does or is able to reveal the natural love, meaning the instinctual, habitual love that it has for God, it's from a much higher source. Okay, so that's what we ended with last time. And we added that that's also the difference between the first 3 days of creation and the 4th day of creation. And the 3 days of creation, the 36 hours, when there was no sun yet. So the light that was there, because it says there was day and there was night.
It was a light from Hashem.
Was light from, it's all light from God, but it was the light, the fixed light that doesn't change. And then the sun represents the light that does change. It wasn't the same
sort of sunlight. It wasn't the same sort of light as sunlight.
No, again, the whole thing is metaphoric. I don't know if you have to, if you need to understand it physically. Well, you need to understand it though. He says that when God archived that light, the light from the first 3 days, and he safeguarded it for the tzaddikim, what the Alter Rebbe said is that it's only the tzaddikim that can handle this type of light.
I mean, when a nuclear bomb goes off, there's a tremendous amount of light radiated, but it's not the same light that comes from the sun.
It's almost exactly. It's just the opposite.
What do you mean?
Physically, it's energy. All light is light. There's no other different types of photons.
If you would analyze it,
it's still photons. It's not anything else. It just has a barrage of other particles, which are radiation particles, beta rays, gamma rays, and whatever else comes out of there. The problem is the frequency. When the frequency is too high, it's called radiating light. It's still photons, but it radiates, meaning it'll destroy tissue because of the frequency of the photon. Right? The photon is always traveling at the speed of light. That's the theory behind Einstein's special theory of relativity. That light is constantly traveling in all inertial frames of reference at the same speed. So why is some light blue and some light red? That has to do with the wavelength. Because when something's traveling, it's because it's a wave. So to travel constantly at the same speed, it means that if your wavelength is long, you have to travel. The frequency has to be shorter, because the speed is equal to wavelength times frequency, right? Meters divided by frequency, seconds. No, times frequency, because the frequency is per second. So it's wavelength times frequency. So if you have a longer wavelength, so the frequency goes down. If you have a shorter wavelength, then the frequency has to go up. So these particles, these photons that come out of an atomic bomb, have very, very high frequency. And the high frequency destroys tissue.
It's not radioactivity?
That's radioactive. There's other particles also, but they're not. None of the particles are radioactive in and of themselves, as far as I know.
Gamma, no alpha.
Gamma and alpha is just a way of saying, as far as I remember, it's just a way of, the same way as saying blue light, red light. It's the same photons, it's just a different frequency. If I'm not mistaken, that's what it means. I could be wrong. I haven't looked at this in a long time. Anyway, so the light that was before the sun, when I told this to my wife yesterday, she said correctly, that's what Koheles calls, what Ecclesiastes calls above the sun and below the sun. And he says something amazing there. He says, even below the sun, there's nothing new. Okay. The usual interpretation is that what he's saying is there's nothing new under the sun, but there's new above the sun. So if you say that above the sun means before the sun, as many times it does, so the first 3 days there is something new. What was something new? Revelation. It's new. And it's not new like below. And relative to that, below the sun, which is from the 4th day and on, this light of the animal soul and everything that has to do with that, that also makes sense, by the way, because in the first 3 days, what did you have? You didn't have animals yet. You only had animals after the sun. Right after the sun, on the 4th day, then on the 5th day you get animals, the first animals, and the 6th day, man and all the other bigger animals. So all the nefesh behemoth is really from the 4th day and on. In the first 3 days, there's nefesh locus. It's all the divine soul. So that's what we ended with last time. So who is able to access this higher type of love, this divine love, great love, major love, that is above the mind? Okay? Only a tzaddik. And the tzaddik sows it in turn in each Jew. Except that when he sows it, it hasn't revealed itself yet, so it's concealed. It's concealed in everybody's soul, in everybody's psyche. So according to this, we can also understand another very important image that's brought in the Zohar. Hay ol zara leikut shabrichu beginta deidnoi. Alidei dehai tzadik deu ganena deginta venatal lehay or vezara lezriya dikshot. ובגלותה גינתה לו העלבי גננה. והוא אור דיו זרוע תדיר, אבי דיבין ומינין ומגרמי הזדרה כגדמיתה. Okay. So this is the quote from the Zohar. So first let's translate it word for word. This light that God sowed in the Garden of Eden was done, so the sowing was done by the tzaddik, who's called the curator, the gardener of the garden. And he took this light and he sowed it a true sowing, there's something truthful about him. True kshot means truth. But in the exile, the gardener does not go into the garden. It's like he's talking
about Hashem.
No, he's talking about the tzaddik. So the tzaddik is the gardener.
But how can the tzaddik be the gardener of Gan Eden in the time before Adam Arishon was made? You're talking about...
Who said that we're talking about Adam Arishon?
You said that light. You said you put aside that light.
Yeah, but who said we're talking about the Garden of Eden with Adam? We're talking about the Garden of Eden. Mm-hmm. And then that light... So if he's not going into the garden, where is it? So there's something missing here. But if he's not going into the garden, is it still a garden?
He's still getting paid. He's not doing his job.
Is the garden still growing? So the answer is yes.
Maybe it's not Shemitah. He doesn't want to work in the garden.
Exactly. So it's like it's in Shemitah. It says that the whole problem with the first exile, the whole reason that it was 70 years was in order to compensate for 70 Shemitahs that they didn't keep. So there's this concept that during the Shemitah, during the 7th year, when you don't till the land, so the land continues to give fruit. If you have a tree, it doesn't stop giving fruit. It's not tended to. If you have even a field that you plowed and you grew something in it, some produce, it continues to produce the produce the year after, even when you're not tilling it, when you're not doing anything to garden it. So it says, so this light that is constantly sown in the ground, it makes fruit, avidibin, uminin, and it makes all kinds of species of produce. And it's like it seeds itself, as before, like it did in the years when the tzaddik was there to till it. Okay, so that's the literal translation. What is this all talking about? So Ginta de Eden in general, the Garden of Eden in general, is talking about all the effluence of light from above to below. Okay, we'll see in a moment that it's specifically what we call the kav v'chut. The kav v'chut is the ray of infinite light that penetrates into our reality. And this ray of infinite light, as it were, you would think that it just happens by itself. He says, no, it doesn't happen by itself, says the Zohar. It doesn't just come down by itself. You need a gardener. It's like a Garden of Eden. So you have to push it down. This is the idea, for instance, that this ray of light is straightness. We talked about the difference between circles and straight. So the circles are the state of fixed things. And we said that's the image. The straightness is change. The soviv is constantly always the same, and the memale is change.
You said in the dream world that the magal, the circle, is not reality because
Again, it's able to,
because you can see forwards and backwards at the same
Okay.
time. It's only the straight.
it's only a straight that's sequential.
Excuse me 1 second. Hello? בסדר? עוד חצי שעה בעזרת השם. תודה על הצלצול. תודה מרבה. גם לך.
What do you have, Corona?
No, they finally found my ink after, messing me around for a whole week.
Your what?
Ink for my printer.
Okay.
Everybody's a commissar or something.
Yeah. That's our.
Yeah?
Yeah. They sequester stuff for you.
Yeah.
Procure it. Anyway, we said that the circle represents, it's like everything in front of you, and it's not changing, but because of that, you can go back and forth. So you can see a person alive, and you can see him die, and then you can see him alive again, because what did you do? You went backwards.
Right, because
Because it's all in front of you.
Okay.
It's like it's all,
Straight line, you can't see the beginning.
but a straight line, you have to
Only
follow,
Hashem.
right.
Only Hashem see the
Right.
beginning.
So for that reason, the circle represents the fixed light, okay? And the straight line represents the changes, which go in a linear fashion.
You know the analogy of the pack of cards is my favorite analogy.
That's a great one, yeah.
You know?
Tell me, I know something
You
about
put all the
cards.
cards out all on the floor and
Yeah.
say everything one go, but if you put them all together and then flick them, then it moves in a
Right.
motion.
So that was the example that we brought about a reel of film.
Yeah.
That when everything is
same idea.
Okay, so the chiddush here is that he says that this whole Gan Eden. This was the chiddush for me because I didn't.
What is this stream of light? What is it exactly?
Your life. What do you mean? This
It's
ray
a
of
ray
light
of light.
is a sequential revelation that is moved forward by your actions, where there are changes possible. Where change is possible.
Where does Bechira come into that?
Only in the ray of light. In the circle, there's no bchira. There's no
So
free
when
will.
Baal Shem Tov met up with Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk when the Magi took him there, and he told him a story. He was a youngster. He told him a story, and the story was the story of his whole life.
Yeah.
And the Magi asked him, "Did you understand the story?" So he said, "Yeah, I understood everything that happened to him. So now I didn't understand." Somebody else was listening. I can't remember.
That's amazing.
Yes, it is. So that's it. But then, as his life went on,
He couldn't understand it.
No, he understood all the bits that the Baal Shem Tov said. And once he became very ill and they started dumping him, he said, "You've got nothing to worry about." So the Baal Shem Tov told me about at least another 20 years to go. So you want to say this ray of light is what the Baal Shem Tov was
No, so
reading?
he was looking at, to be able to see from the beginning to the end, you have to use the circle. You can't see it in the sequential.
Not the
That's
Baal
why you
Shem
couldn't
Tov?
understand
Baal
it.
Shem Tov? No, the Baal Shem Tov.
That's exactly the point. That's what we've been saying all along. That the Baal Shem Tov used the chiddush of the Baal Shem Tov, or the way that the Alter Rebbe explains the Baal Shem Tov, is that the Baal Shem Tov looked at two things at the same time. He both understood the troubles of people. That's the ray of infinite light. And he also could see what it looks like from a divine point of view. From a divine point of view, it just looks different. That's what you said, that he didn't understand. I understood everything until now, but I didn't understand the rest because I haven't been there yet. But the Baal Shem Tov, the way he's looking in the circle, the Sovev, he's seeing some version of what the Vitebsker's life is going to be like. But the Vitebsker can't understand it yet because he hasn't been there. The same thing. There's a book of Chezionot. There's different books of visions. And the one that's most famous now is the one from Reb Nachman. Reb Nachman wrote something. I guess they claim it goes all the way to the coming of Mashiach, whatever. And when you read it, it's like it's not even a fairy tale. It's just weird. It was lost, as it were, for a long time, but now it's been published. It turns out nobody lost it or somebody made it up to 2 weeks ago. I don't know. Whatever it is. And when you read it, it doesn't read like something normal out of this reality. But you understand that there's something going on. In fact...
If it was really written by him.
What do you mean?
If it's really a Reb Nachman story.
Yeah, it probably is. Probably is. It's not like his stories. His stories are even worse. I mean, not worse. Wrong word. His stories are they're more fairy tale like, and you can understand what he's trying to say at some level. But this book is just cryptic. You just can't understand what in the world is going on. And I'm guessing that he wrote it out of a state of seeing the Soviv, at least what he could see. And so I imagine that when the Baal Shem Tov revealed to the Vitebsker his life, it sounded something like that. But the Vitebsker could understand because he had been, whatever you've been through, you already understand this is what it meant. But now, the rest of it I don't understand yet because I don't know how it's going to actually work out. So that's a very good, that's exactly what a tzaddik does. He sees the circle. He doesn't see the line. He doesn't know exactly what he went through. He can't tell you the details, maybe.
Yeah, it's very similar in a non-similar way. The famous story of the Rebbe Rashab. Somebody came to Rebbe Rashab and he wanted the bracha for his son to go to America. And the Rebbe Rashab, he bought a ticket for the boat and the Rebbe Rashab said to him, tell him not to go. So he didn't listen. The guy went on the boat sank and he died. So he came back to Rebbe Rashab and he said,
If you knew,
why
didn't you stop him?
So he said, I didn't know he was going to drown. I didn't know he was going to die. I knew one thing, shouldn't go.
Okay.
I didn't know what was the shouldn't go about.
You can't tell.
Right.
That's exactly what it is. So the Soviv is seeing it like a tzaddik. But here the tzaddik has another role, and it's to bring the light from the Soviv into the Memale. This is what Yosef does.
So every person has got a different cow. Every person has
Can. That's the whole point. It's a lifeline. It's basically what you call a lifeline.
There's millions of people.
Billions of them. Maybe.
And Goyim as well.
I don't know. I know that by a Jew there's a connection to the infinite. I don't know how it works by a non-Jew.
Kosh Baruch Hu did create the Goyim.
Again, it could
be everything. He created the cats and the dogs. I mean,
could very well be that what the prophet describes, that there is going to be 2,800 non-Jews hanging on to every Jew, means that they, in their mission in life, they don't have a separate line, but their line is some kind of extension of the Jew that they're supposed to be connected to. It could
You're
be.
riding in my car.
What?
You're riding in my car.
Something like that. But the problem is that it's not so clear that they know about it. Okay, they definitely don't have a big enough car. So again, the Chiddush now is that now he's going to explain to us that Yosef, as the one who sees the Ol Kadma, the one who sees the ancient light from the first 3 days of creation, he sees the Soviv, he sees how everything is from God's perspective. He also has a role to bring it down into the lifeline of each individual that's connected to him. So the tzaddik sees whatever he sees, but his act is to bring that chesed, that it's all called chesed.
Yosef is the one who's feeding the whole.
Yeah. That's Perik Pei. We'll see it in a moment. Chapter 80. He brings this. So what's going on? So the kav, every kav is called the Garden of Eden. So that's, first of all, it's a big chiddush. The Rebbe once said, didn't just once say, he said this many times, that the kav is Shechina, is Malchus. And everybody thought it was a big chiddush. It's written right here. At least I thought it was a big chiddush. Not just me, I heard it from other people also. When did he explain this? He explained it in Basi Lagani. He says that what the 7 generations have brought the Shechina down, that's the kav. It's not a big chiddush, it's what it says right here. And when it says Bati Lagani, what Gan are we talking about? The kav, Gan Eden. Lemakom shaya ikari batchila means that initially the Shechina was supposed to appear through the lifespan of each Jew, the lifeline of every Jew. The only issue, though, is what happens in a sabbatical year or in exile.
That's why the Rebbe never took a holiday.
When you're in exile, so the tzaddik doesn't tend to your garden. He doesn't tend to your kav.
Hashem said, I went into exile with the Jewish people.
What?
Hashem said.
The Shechina goes with you. Yeah, right.
So
So the question is, what does this look like? So now we'll explain. Uferush ginata, the meaning of the garden here in the Zohar, ובחינת המשכת הקו החוט ממלכות דאין סוף, שהוא ראשית הקו, עד סיומו נקרא כל בחינת גינתא שהיא בחינת מלכות. בסדר? שחור על גבי לבן. Black and white it says.
Translate that.
Again, that the kav, what does the kav do? That all the infinite light is outside of reality, as it were. Again, outside the reality of the sun, outside the reality of change. That's where the infinite is, right? Because in the reality of change, the reality that our consciousness is living right now at this moment, there can't be anything infinite. It's very interesting that the infinite is static. It's fixed. The infinite doesn't change. Right? Sometimes people think infinite must be, the most changing thing in the world. No, on the contrary. Once you've said everything, there's nothing more to say. You've included everything already. So the garden is the kav, the ray of light, which, what does it do? It connects the malchus de Ein Sof, meaning the highest level of malchus, which is the very end of the infinite, when the infinite is just about to churn into change, okay, into this reality. It's called the malchus of Ein Sof. It's when Hashem decides He's going to be king, and since you can't be king over anything but a people, and people, am, means change, by definition, people means change. Therefore, this kav, this line, which is, or ray of light, which is also called the Garden of Eden, and which is bringing down the infinite light from the highest level to where you are right now on your lifeline. That's called the Garden of Eden, and that's the Malchus. And again, that's the integration. That's Islapshus. That's everything that we talk about being this limited light of Hashem. Ahavat Olam, right? This is all in the world, inside reality. וכמאמר הז"ל, מה הגן צריך להדור ולהשקות ולזמור, שבחינת עבודת הבירורים, שזה נעשה על ידי יוסף הצדיק. So in a normal state, the tzaddik tills the garden. So you have a connection with the tzaddik, or you have a connection with your own tzaddik. Who's your tzaddik? Your tzaddik is your foundation, your yesod. What's the yesod? Yesod literally means self-fulfillment. The yesod in each person means, literally, that's what it means, to fulfill my duty in the world, to carry out my mission. The foundation is related in the body to the procreative organs. Why? Because that's the first duty that you have. The first place that I fulfill myself is through my offspring. So that's why the yesod is the procreative organs, but there's many other things. in essence, the yesod, a person who has a foundation, is a person who has self-confidence. He has confidence that he can achieve something. What does he need to achieve? So it depends. If he gets it right, so he understands he has a mission for which his neshama came into the world, the soul came into the world, and that's what he tries to pursue. That's his foundation. If he doesn't get it, so he thinks it's about getting money.
That can take a very long time.
What?
Sometimes it can take.
What do you mean sometimes? It takes your whole life.
No, to even appreciate that there's some.
You may never appreciate it. Some people never appreciate. They don't give it a name. It doesn't matter. Even if you don't give it a name, it doesn't matter. What does it matter? That's what you're doing.
As you're talking, I'm thinking to myself something. Thinking, it's a weird thought, but beginning to understand why the Litayim don't want to learn Hasidus, and why we do. Because all of what we're saying now is chayev. It makes you understand that you have a mission, and you have to fulfill the mission.
Okay.
I don't want to know about it. It's too much obligation.
I want something simple. Tell me my mission is to do what it says in Shulchan Aruch, and I'm happy. And that's called, I want to go over a steel bridge. That's what it's called in Chabad. I want security. I don't want confidence in Hashem. I don't want self-confidence. I want security. Meaning I want insurance. Give me an insurance plan. That's what I want. And Chassidus, the Baal Shem Tov, is, it starts from the point of view that you can't always walk over a steel bridge. Life is not walking over a steel bridge. You can't expect security. There's not going to be security or insurance here. And if you try to play that way, you'll miss it. You'll miss out. You won't perform what you were able to do. You'll always do less. Where do you get?
It's a frightening statement.
No, it's the truth. It's easy to see. I don't think it's very difficult to see. You'll have maybe what you call a secure life, and you'll do much less than what you could have done with it. A lot of it, it's not just Litvaks. Most people in the world prefer the security. And there's a whole book that Erich Fromm wrote called Fleeing from Freedom. The escape from freedom. This is people are afraid to be free. They're afraid of it. Give me security. Give me my security blanket. So one guy, his security blanket is the $100 million he has in the bank. The other guy, it's a Shulchan Aruch. It's the same problem. It doesn't matter. Because both of them will stop you from doing what you really need to do. Yeah. It's like, I told you the thing that Warren Buffett said about his inheritance to his children. He says, I'm going to leave them enough money to do anything they want, but not enough to do nothing. It's great. It's not going to be a security blanket. It's going to be a possibility. I'm going to leave them enough money so that they can possibly do anything they want. I think that's how Hashem wants the world. He wants the world exactly in that balance, where you'll get by, but what you do with what I'm going to give you to get by is up to you. You can either just get by, or you can actually do something of value. And I think that's
spiritually you're talking about.
In every sense. Of course, Gashmi, spiritually, it's all the same. The world works the same.
Dedicate your life to acquiring more Gashmis.
There are people that's what they do. Fine, no, maybe that's their mission. I don't know. Maybe Elon Musk, that's what he's supposed to do. You see that he's not looking for security. You see that the people that are really moving forward are just not interested in security. They're interested in something else. They're interested in doing. You can say that that's the big. I didn't tell you this. I don't think I told you this. But the way I'm understanding nowadays, in the last few months, the animal soul and the divine soul. The animal soul is not a bad guy. We talked about this once. Arizal says that they're both two holy angels that you receive when you're born. The animal soul is survival. That's what it has in mind. The Baal Shem Tov said once that if a tzaddik doesn't lead a congregation, or he said like this, if the tzaddik doesn't sit at the head of the table, then the Samech Mem will sit at the head of the table. And suddenly realized that he was saying this about every person. It wasn't just about a congregation. It wasn't just about a group of people. It was also you. If your tzaddik is going to sit at the head of the table, you're going to push forward in life and you're going to do great things. with whatever you have. But if he doesn't sit at the table, the animal soul is going to sit at the table. That's the samech mem. And what is it interested in? Survival.
But we said the animal soul is holy.
It's holy.
So
Survival is very holy.
So then how can he be the samech mem?
Because the samech mem is just the negative side of it. Survival can become something very negative. I'll give you an example. I gave this to my wife as we were talking a few weeks ago. I have a whole theory that whenever the Medrash calls Moshe Rabbeinu Ben Amram, it's a derogatory statement. And the reason I say this is because most of the times that he's called Ben Amram, the son of Amram, he's called that by his opposition. The ones who loved it the most were Datan and Aviram. It says every time you look in the Medrash, you do a search. The Medrash that is at least the text hasn't been changed over time. So sometimes they change. So you find that the Tana Aviram always call him Ben Amram. Why do they call him Ben Amram? Why is that a derogatory term? Like, why is he couldn't find anything? Dumbhead, I don't know, pinhead. It's all kinds of words. Ben Amram. And then it hit me that Amram is he's a tzaddik, and he's not a positive figure. Not that he's Chaz v'shalom, he did anything wrong. He never sinned. He never sinned. He's one of the 4 people who never sinned in their lives. But he survived. It's a crazy thing. Look at what he did. He was the leader before Moshe came along. And what's his solution to the problem with Pharaoh?
Divorce your wife.
Divorce your wife. Don't have any kids. So even his daughter got it.
It's cop out. It's cop out.
It's not a cop out. He does what a rabbi is supposed to do. He does what a leader is supposed to do. Help your congregation survive. At least survive. That's the least I can do for you.
Okay. And Miriam told him.
Miriam told him, we're not into survival. Because it turns out that when you do things for survival, you may do things that are worse than the first situation. You paint yourself in such a corner that in the end, you're ruining your life even worse than if you wouldn't have done it. That's a very deep thing to see. That you can be a tzaddik mamish.
I understood Ben Amram as a derogatory statement for a completely different reason. So they're saying to him, you Moshe Rabbeinu are nothing.
You're only because of
Amram was your father.
Okay.
So you
That's
lost
also
the
true.
power.
That's probably also true. But I understand it as, again, I once gave it this to Rav Yitzchak, he didn't like it. I said it, okay. He didn't like it. He didn't say no, but he didn't like it. Yeah, there's a reason why. I know why he doesn't like it. I think I know. Because there's a series of numbers, this beautiful series of numbers, I showed it to you once, that starts with Ben Amram and finishes with Moshe. So it's a very interesting, 10 numbers in it. It's a really beautiful thing that he found. I think it has something to do with it.
To have a series.
In any case. So when you try to pursue survival, that can be the samech mem. It's not the samech mem in the sense that you did something wrong.
That it can be a cop out, but it can also be great heroism.
Right. Sometimes it's heroism. Sometimes the guy who knows how not to fight back is a hero.
That lady in the book survived, right?
Okay.
She was a big hero. She
Exactly.
was a tremendous hero.
She didn't go to fight.
No, the fact that she survived, you're amazing.
That made her.
And this is the big sad story of the.
But it's not so
this
simple.
Medina.
In your
They laugh at him because they survived instead of fighting.
Settle. But look at your story, the one that you brought. She did the hard thing. She didn't do the easy thing. The easy thing would have been to conform and to go with everybody on that transport. That would have been the easy thing. To listen to your dream that your father told you it's not time to go yet. That's the hard thing. And she would have been killed.
And persuading the others.
And persuading others because it's not dependent just on you.
They also
Okay. And it's not dependent just on you because there's 5 people that have to agree with you. Otherwise, this is not going to work.
Right.
That's the hard thing to do. That's not survival. That is taking the risk. And in that sense, that's what the tzaddik gives you. He gives you the power to take the risk. To do what needs to be done, even though it's the hard path. It's not the easy path. In that sense, the tzaddik is the divine soul. That's what we've been saying. He's the Av Rabban. But in the Golus, he says, when you're in exile, when you're not connected to the tzaddik, so you don't have security. That's exactly what exile is. Exile is a state in which you cannot take the risks because you need to survive. Exile is about survival. It's not about pushing forward. It's very hard to push forward when you're in exile. And yet, he says, even then the tzaddik does something. How does he do it? Since you're not able yet to fully listen to your foundation, to the tzaddik inside of you. You can't fully take the risk needed to complete your mission. So he says there's something new. There are two types of growth, of produce in the ground, in the field. What are they? The one is when you till the ground, you sow it, and then you reap. That requires work. That's done when you're not in exile. But the other type, says this is what the ground produces by itself, without you doing anything, without doing anything special.
That's the Baal Shem Tov says. The worst and bitterest exile is to not know that you're in exile.
Okay. He says even if you're in exile, there's still a tzaddik.
But that's what Hakadosh Baruch Hu throws over his shoulder.
Why do you say that?
What's growing in the ground? You didn't plant.
No, this is something else.
That's the leftover.
No, I don't.
It's like the bones that he throws over his shoulder.
No, that's to somebody he doesn't want to give. Here he's just saying that the tzaddik can't do his work. There's no way for him to do his work. Again, it's like being in a state in which the person is too much under pressure and right now can't break out. So what do you do? What do you do in such a state? He says even then, even in that state, there is some continuous growth going on of this infinite light that's coming down, meaning you can still see something from what the tzaddik would have given you. Okay, and that's the main, that was the main point of this whole mimer, because he was standing before people who said, the Baal Shem Tov's theories are all very nice and good. And what does the Baal Shem Tov say? The Baal Shem Tov says you have to stand up for yourself. You have to have confidence in yourself. The confidence that Hashem is with you. You have to. That's what the tzaddik does. So he says to them, look, or they say to him, look, that's a very nice theory, but in practice we're in exile. We can't really stand up for ourselves. We can't really push forward. We can't really break out of our state. We're stuck. He says, there's no such thing. Even if you're stuck, even if you're in that position, and the tzaddik can't awaken you, can't give you the confidence to take the risks, to be able to push forward, there's still natural growth that comes out in that sense. That still exists in every person. So even if you're not connected to the tzaddik and you don't know what to do, you'll find it in yourself. There is such a thing. And that's the main thing that he wanted, I think, to explain in this mimer, and we'll develop it a little bit more. But this is, but in general, that this is what Yosef does. Meaning Yosef, again, it's not just Yosef then in Mitzrayim. It's Yosef all the time. No, because they don't see the Sovev. They're not going to. So I said that, yes, we talked about this. That he starts the mimer by saying, but they also understood the Ma. They also understood the Sovev. He says, yeah, but he has a different level of understanding. He sees it really for what it is, the source of everything. They can't see it as the source of everything. So we'll see that more maybe next time.